Well, we had a pretty interesting debate last night. Before we begin with our coverage of the first Republican debate of the 2024 cycle, I just want to point out that this has already been a really interesting and very weird primary. And not even just for the Republicans, but just think about this. You have an incumbent Democratic president with two challengers who are polling higher than most of the Republicans in the open primary, but who the Democratic incumbent refuses to debate. And then you have a Republican candidate who used to be president, who, because he's polling so highly, believes that he's like, I guess, owed the nomination or has it all locked down despite no one voting yet. So he uses that as a justification to dodge going to a debate. And then even when he's not there, you still have like his aura and presence just permeating through the place. It's incredible just how odd this stuff has gotten. I'd say the very clear winner was Ramaswamy. I'm trying to be as objective as possible here. The reason I say this is because I think he had a very, because I've said before, most political candidates, including the ones that run for president, are not famous. So when they register at 5, 3, 8% compared to Trump's 20, 30, 40, much of it has to do with people just not knowing who they are. And to Ramaswamy's credit, I almost felt like, because he had this comment I was going to make a video about where he said that him and Trump were the only ones that matter in the race. Very ego-filled comment to make, in my opinion, when DeSantis is still polling higher than him. But to his credit, it really did seem like he was the secondary front runner, or you would almost think he was polling in second place everywhere from the way that the debate went. Um, his argument with Haley, his beef with his skirmish with Christie, he had a little brief interaction with Pence about pardoning Trump on day one. This was he really did dominate the debate more so than anyone else. I think he was the very clear highlight of the night, and I think he succeeded in getting his name out there. I thought his responses, even if they were ones I didn't agree with at all, were good for the most part. Really, I think he's much better at responding to people than directly speaking about something. And just to give you an example, he said that he thought Trump was the best president of the 21st century, which I thought was hilarious because, well, two reasons. One, you're grading him on a bell curve, or on a curve rather, because it's like you have him, the one before him who expanded healthcare coverage but also took us from 2 wars to seven, and the one before that who launched the longest U.S. war ever and left office with the worst recession since the Great Depression. Um, I would say Trump would be definitely not the worst, but I'd probably say Obama would be my pick for the. And it's like that's the only like that's literally a choice between three presidents that I don't really like that much at all. So it's really just pick your poison. But that comment stood out to me more so for the fact that I can't understand for the life of me how someone can say like it's one thing to say I thought the person's tenure was great, whatever. The best president of the 21st century is the only one who so far has lost re-election and is the one I'm running against. If like that's what I think is so interesting about this primary, that these candidates, they know that the Republican Party, the Republican voters at least, are effectively a Trump cult. They're people who will support him no matter what. So they have to walk this extremely thin line of not criticizing him, but also trying to like make the case for themselves. And I really don't get how Ramaswamy can make a comment like that and justify his own campaign's existence. And it's comments like that, in addition to saying that he's going to pardon Trump on day one, etc., that to me really feel more like things a person who's angling for a VP or cabinet pick would say over someone who genuinely thinks if I just keep running, I can beat Trump. Because I think a lot of these people, as deluded as they may be, do genuinely look in the mirror and say to themselves, "Oh, people just haven't heard of who I am yet. I have a chance." Like Hutchinson, complete snooze fest. Tim Scott, another overhyped, worthless candidate. This guy just disappeared. I have a hard time remembering anything he said other than I was the single child of a I was the child of a single mother. Other than that, I don't really remember anything he said. He was just a total waste. The other two people that I would say stood out were Haley and Christie. And Christie stood out because, and Ramaswamy tried to say, "Oh, your whole campaign is prefaced on your revenge against Trump." Well, that there is some legitimacy to that claim, but the caveat is because Christie is running in a primary where everyone except for himself and to an extent Hutchinson as well are afraid to criticize Trump at all. It leaves him this, and Trump looms over the debate stage, even though he's not there. It leaves this big, giant crater of a space for someone like him to come in and be like, yeah, you know what? We need to get over this guy, move on, etc. Basically, Ramaswamy's comment about Christie's campaign being focused on Trump was accurate, but it's not really an insult when he's owning up to, yes, I'm here to be the wrecking ball and say the things the other candidates don't. And he was certainly a highlight of the night. I think I'm never not astonished by the level of Reagan worship that still permeates. Like when he ended the debate, and he was like, "Oh, the last Democratic incumbent who lost was Carter, and he lost to a Republican governor from a blue state." No, that's not true at all. California back in the 60s, 70s, and arguably the 80s and 90s as well, I would say leaned purple. And in fact, you could actually make the argument it was more, it turned more into a red state like around that period, like of the 80s, because remember Tom Bradley lost his gubernatorial bid. But it's just funny that he tried to like rewrite history and pretend that, Reagan was in this extremely liberal democratic threshold state of, no, that's not how it was back then. But other than that, I liked most of what he had to say. The comparison to Obama was funny with him and with calling Ramos, even though I will say I think it's not that great of a comparison because while it does work since Obama's like devil incarnate figure for Republicans, he at the very least had some government experience and a record that people could look at. He voted for this, voted for that. So I think to compare a businessman who, I mean, Ramaswamy really is just a much younger version of Trump, which is why he's like trying to embrace him as much as he can. So I think the Obama comparison only really works because of Ramaswamy saying like, "Who's this person with a funny name?" And other than that, it's just it all just kind of like falls through. Like the only thing they have in common is youth and I guess an atypical name, a rare name, a unique name, etc. That's really just about it. But the skirmish between Haley and Ramaswamy was hilarious, where she's defending more involvement in Ukraine and Israel, and it's funny how for months her campaign has just floundered to me. Like she's just been running and running and running and just staying at 4, 5, 6%. But I have to admit, she was very aggressive here. I mean, she told Pence, "We don't have enough votes to get this abortion ban. The Senate will not confirm it." And I do think there's going to be some segment of voters who don't know that much about her. I don't think it's going to be enough to win this primary or win any of the states, but there's going to be some segment of those quote unquote normal type voters who don't pay attention to this stuff as much as some other people do, who will look at the way she's spoken, as forceful as she was, and give her a look, give her some consideration. I do think that for someone who's been so afraid to criticize Trump, she did an okay job where she said he was the most unpopular person in the country or politician in the country. That is true. He left. I mean, let's not forget 2016. Him and Clinton had the lowest approval ratings of any presidential nominees in American history since polling started. So her comment was accurate, and the only stuff she said that really just annoyed me probably was the her defense of wanting to give Israel more and more and more and more and more and more and more money. So it was oh, and DeSantis just completely disappeared. The only thing I can remember him saying is, I got no beef with Pence. That's about it. And it's crazy too, because it's like this guy was talking about wanting to take a sledgehammer to Ramaswamy, and it's like he just disappeared on stage. Like I rewatched the debate like the second half for the second time. I've only seen it through one full time, but I can barely remember a word. Like him and Scott are the most overhyped. Like, listen, Haley, Christie, and Ramaswamy were the highlights of the debate. DeSantis, Scott, Hutchinson, and to a lesser extent, I guess Burgum, total nothingness. And Pence was okay. Pence was someone who tried to do the Morning in America thing of, we need a government as good as its people, etc., etc. At least with him, I can remember what he said. But this field is just such a strange assortment of characters, and really it's a weird debate to have the front runner not there. Like, I remember there was a debate that Trump skipped in the 2016 cycle, and it's really sad that Republican voters are so cultish, because they should feel the most offended by him thinking that he's too good to talk to the other people running. And I can only hope that after this debate, whether they do this for the sake of ratings, whether they do this for the sake of trying to goad him, I hope that one of these candidates, it could be Ramaswamy, Haley, DeSantis, whoever, probably one of those two over the last one of them rises up in the polls by a solid 10-20%, and then Trump will finally come and debate. Because I think his presence was felt even though he wasn't there. And I think him being there will allow more people to be more critical of him. I think his 2024 campaign compared to the 2016 one is a joke. And one of the other candidates, if they're able to directly speak to him and not have to respond to interviews and other little stuff where they're all scattered around the world, I think they'd have a higher chance of being able to make a dent in his rating. But yeah, that's what I thought of the debate. It was pretty goofy. I was entertained by portions of it. I'm looking forward to the next one. It's really funny. Of course, they'd have it in my state in a place where I can't go and see it in person, but it is what it is.